Scales, arpeggios, and how to keep it from being boring. I think that's about it. There's a lot to talk about there. Would you agree, Tyler?
Scales, man. I know when I was practicing a lot, especially when talking about how to hear chords, hearing notes, thirds, fifths, scales was an integral part in that practice. And you taught me a few different methods to keep it from being boring. So we can definitely dive into that.
All right, all right, all right. I like it. I like it. I like it. I'm going to put on my spectacles so I can actually watch my notes here and make sure we don't miss anything, because there's a lot of stuff here to cover. Here's something that I remember. Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Right, conversation. We talked about playing all the scales in root position. And there's some people who went like, I didn't know that scales had roots. Well, kind of. They do grow on you, but you don't plant on anything. Root position means you start from the first note of the scale. If it is a C scale, you start on C. If it is an F scale, you start on F. The root is always 1. So 1 root, first note of the scale. That is what we are talking about. Starting all the scales in root position. That is the way that we do it. And most often, we never do it any other way. Although in a major scale, let's see, there are at least 7 other ways to do that. You can start on the 2, you can start on the 3, or the 4, the 5, or the 6, or maybe even the 7. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, sir.
And in doing that, for all you jazz enthusiasts out there, I'm just going to throw it out there for you. If you did that, starting on the 2, guess what you got? The Dorian mode, perfect for minors. And if you started on the 3, oh my God, you got that Spanish stuff going. The Phrygian, nightmare of Phrygian mode. And then there's always a Lydian on 4, and the real popular mixolydian, sort of mix-a-lot Lydian, and then the old-fashioned minor, the Aeolian, and then that dark and lovely and very, very bluesy Locrian on the 7. How am I doing?
You're doing great. And that's all from one scale? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, just by starting on the 1 to the 1, then the 2 to the 2, Dorian, 3 to the 3, Phrygian, 4 to the 4, Lydian, 5 to the 5, Mixolydian, 6 to the 6, Aeolian, and 7 to the 7, we got that really bluesy Locrian, baby. And then you've got all the church modes. They're going to start out in the church with that Pope Gregory guy.
Yeah.
So we jazz musicians, we went, hey man, these cats in church, they'll be boring with these modes. Let's jazz them up. And so now those original church modes from the old Catholic Church, of course, are now used all over the jazz world. Talking about jazzing up the spirit, spiriting up the jazz. Hello.
Absolutely. And so by practicing that one scale in 7 different positions, we're covering not just a major scale now. You talked about covering Dorian mode, right? Phrygian, Lydian, Aeolian, all these modes, Locrian. And at first they might seem very complicated, but once you break them down into first, second, third degrees of your major scale, it can really help you understand.
It's just a major scale starting on a different degree. It's the same scale. It just sounds different because you're starting on a different point within that scale. And that's also good for the ear. And I think that's a very good thing. It also gets you through all your modalities so you understand which key signatures work as a mode on what chord. It's a very good exercise to do, both from a physical standpoint and from a mental standpoint in terms of figuring out these harmonic hurdles that really stump a whole lot of young jazz players. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. You know, you're a smart guy, by the way. The only smart thing, the not so smart thing you did, is you stayed in my Ruth Eckerd Hall Jazz Band too long. You took a lot of punishment in that band. I probably would have quit, but we'll talk about that later.
I feed off that, you know. And so when you talk about these varied ways of practicing your scales, now we can take that practice not only through modes, but we can also talk about articulation as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now, one thing I see a lot of students doing, high school, middle school, is they'll get used to practicing their scales very one-dimensional. Okay,
Yeah.
They'll use one method of rhythm, whether it's the all-stay pattern, tongued up, slurred down, you name it, and they can't seem to break those not necessarily bad habits, but just the same practice habits.
Yep.
And because of it, the students become bored.
Yep.
Now, we just talked about, how we can change one scale into seven modes, excuse me. Now, talk about how we can vary some of the articulations as well with the practice.
Yeah, well, it's according to what it is you might want to do. As a matter of fact, I always say, work on your weaknesses. I raised 2 musicians in my home, and I let them practice as long, as late, and early as they wanted to. There was only one rule in my home about practicing. If you sounded good, you had to shut up. What? If you sounded good? Yeah, because if you sound good, that means you aren't working on anything that's doing you any good. You're just playing. If you're working on the stuff that makes you better, that stuff is not going to sound good because it's stuff you really can't do. So the first thing is, which articulations give you the most trouble? Those are the ones I would first apply to scale, because you normally know your scale better than you know anything else, and that helps reduce some of the mental stress of working on a problematic articulation for you. So for trombone players, for instance, legato tongues are the ones you need to work with the most, because that's as close to our slur as we possibly can get. Obviously, the marcato. What about staccato? Just really light and detached. That's what we should do. What about creating patterns? What about tongue slur, tongue slur, tongue slur, tongue slur? Or tongue slur, 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 tongue slur, 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 tongue slur, slur, slur. There's a million different ways that you can take 2 or 3 articulations and put them in various patterns to ease the boredom and to challenge yourself in bettering yourself on those articulations that give you the most trouble.
Now, should I practice these scales as fast as possible to try to get, the quickest sound, or how do you recommend the students practicing in terms of tempo?
Always slow and with perfection first. People must understand that speed does not come from speed. Speed comes from accuracy. And the first thing you want to do is play it very, very slow and very, very accurate. And then gradually speed up till you get a tempo at which it is challenging and you still have great accuracy. And then, you know what? Push yourself. Go even faster. Maybe it's a struggle. Maybe you miss a note or 2 here and there. Maybe it is not as accurate, but you're pushing yourself to the next level, and that too is important, as long as it's not the only thing you do. Remember, the first thing is slow and accurate. Okay?
Absolutely. And I remember you told me that is when you practice, especially something for the very first time, don't be afraid to practice it slow enough where you can't make a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, I still live with that, and yeah. It's great advice. When practicing something for the first time, you need to not only understand it, but practice getting in those motions. Now, yeah. Running into that exercise at 100 miles an hour might not be the most effective way.
Yeah.
So, a way to counter that.
Definitely not the most effective way. Might make your friends feel good. Oh my God, he can play really fast. Yeah, but they can't hear all the slop. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so again, so we're talking about varied articulations, varied modes now with scales. Could we also vary maybe how we're playing these quarter notes or eighth notes in terms of straight eighths, or maybe swinging these eighth notes?
Yeah, I'm a jazzer, so with my jazz band, we never played straight eighth note. That's for the straight guys on the classical side. That's for my wind ensemble and brass ensemble and all those, classical, straight, little tight organisms. For us jazz loose cats, we need to have that swing. So we got the little triplet thing going on, you know what I mean? And we got the rhythm going, and we are also not accenting the downbeats like you do in classical music. You're accenting the upbeats. So you got to use that air a little differently. That's one way to do that. And the air has to mirror the articulation. You got to pulse the air on those upbeats. Bob Barfield?
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. Bob's trombone player too,
Yep.
Quite good trombone players, man.
Fantastic, yeah.
And he had a lot of little cheats. Whenever he had a jazz band that wasn't quite what he needed to be with that swing thing, he would cheat. Okay. He would put the tongue articulation on the upbeat and have them slur into the downbeat. That way you would have the automatic emphasis on the upbeat, because that's the only place that the tongue is. D-I, 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 da, is the way he would do it. And you know what? He laughed all the way to the bank. His bands always got superiors, and the judge could never hear that little cheat he was doing. So we're talking about, do you swing it? Do you play straight? We're talking about how to work with articulations. Here is a way to combine the two. Here is a way to use a tongue accent on the upbeats from playing swing, and then slur into the downbeat, or legato in the downbeat, of course, if you're a trombone player. Toe, 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 or ta-da, ta-da, ta-loo, to-loo, whatever, do-loo, do-loo, do-loo. Whatever articulations you use, that is a perfect way to approach that in terms of multitasking on these slurs, articulation, style, the scale itself, etc. Yeah.
And we're not necessarily aiming, we're not necessarily aiming for as fast as possible, but as consistent as possible. Yeah. We want to make sure the accents sound the same through the bottom of our register to the, to the middle, to the top. We're trying to match these.
Yeah. It's funny, great mistakes. Like, if someone ever heard John Coltrane practicing, right, and heard him run his scales, they go, "Oh my God, look at how fast he's going, man. Look how fast he's practicing. Oh, man, that's where I got to go home and practice." Well, what they don't realize is what they hear may be fast for them. That's not fast for John Coltrane. That's just a stride for him. When he's at home and no one is listening, that's when he's pushing that envelope. So please understand, just because you think someone is playing at the top of their game fast, doesn't mean that's all they got. That's just all you can hear. All you know.
I love it. And never judge yourself to anyone else. That's another lesson you taught me is, we are all our own musicians.
Right.
We all have our own paths. We all have our own sounds. What works for this guy may not work for you. Right. It might, but don't be afraid if it doesn't. We have to find what works for us, and that's why practicing in these modes, you get to know your playing. You get to know which articulation works best and which register the horn you're in.
Yeah.
Right. And so we talk.
I'm sorry.
I've
always said that the best competition I have ever had is myself. Once you set up the competition with yourself, once your goal is to get the very best you out of you every day, there is no better competition than that. I don't care what avenue of pursuit you're following. It's about making you the best you that you can be. It's what it's all about.
You got to navigate and drive the engine. Very important. So we talked about modes. We talked about patterns. We talked about articulation. Let's go on into arpeggiation practice for a minute.
Yeah.
Now, so for arpeggiations, we often, as musicians, practice 1-3-5 root, right?
Right.
Do you believe in maybe inverting these triads to approach it on the horn?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you know, all chords are invertible. You all know first inversion, second inversion, blah, 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 you know? So if we were dealing with 4 notes, you have the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 8, okay? And that's the way most of us play our arpeggios. What about going 3, 5, 8, 3? Or 5, 8, 3, 5? Or then up the octave, 8, 3, 5, 8. You see what I'm saying? So you're completely inverting the entire arpeggio. Whatever that note is up there that I can't sing. Okay, that's my female voice. There you have it. So that is another way to do it. It expands the range of that particular avenue of pursuit, and also gives you a different sound palette to the same harmonic structure. You're still playing, let's say, a B flat major arpeggio. You just playing it in different inversions, which means you're working different slide movements, different oral responsibilities, different intonation challenges, and sometimes even different positions because of the way that works out on the horn with the slide. So it's all of that. I recommend taking that arpeggio and always inverting it.
Now, when we practice these arpeggios, sometimes the arpeggio might not lay too well on the horn going by these root positions that we're taught early on in trombone. So would this be a good place to maybe practice and imply these alternate positions?
It is. I always started using those with scales first. For instance, okay, if I'm playing any scale that has a D natural in it that appears between a C and an E flat, I have 2 choices. I can play that D in first, or I can play it in 4. Well, most kids, they only know D in first, so they go 3, 1, 3. Well, they can never play as well as me because I'm going to do 4. I'm going to go 3, 4, 4, 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 3. It's just a flick of the finger, not all this movement. Therefore, I'm going to be more accurate, quicker, etc. So I always start with just basic scale alternate positions, particularly E flat major scales are going to have that D in 4th position. Some structures in B flat major where you're going up to the E flat, passing through the C to the D, you want to use that 4th position. Those are the first ones, you know what I mean? If you're playing, say, an E flat arpeggio, where you're playing, and just a 3-note arpeggio, where you're playing E flat G, your next choice is B flat in first. Well, there's also a B flat in 5th. So why would you go 3, 4, 1? But you can go 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, as opposed to 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1. Just look at all that mess. So all the musicians must be practical, and you must also work to ensure that the intonation and the timbre is going to be identical to the primary position for that note. And there are exercises, I hate to say this again, but in my chops book for trombone, there's definitely an exercise for working on alternate positions, starting with F in 6th and F in 1st and B flat in 5th and B flat, etc. and D in first and fourth and seventh, and on and on and on, so that you get to understand where those positions are and what's required to play them in tune and in tone, which is definitely as important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Trying to hear these things is first and foremost. We can all hear that B flat in first for a trombonist, but trying to hear that same B flat out in fifth position might seem a little awkward at first. We're only used to playing fifth positions for G flats, and when we start playing more notes that we're accustomed to in these different positions, well, that's when we can actually rely on our ear. We know what it sounds like, so that's when you have to rely on what you've been listening and practicing all these years, and say, okay, I'm hearing this B flat, I'm going to put my flat out here, adjust my embouchure accordingly and play. Now, fifth position B flat and fourth position D are probably the two most important alternates for a beginning trombone.
And for people who do not have an F attachment, of course, F in six is very important because a lot of times you find patterns where you're using a C in sixth and an F, or if I go 6-1, we can go 6-6. When they had those old printed straight horns, that was one of the most important ones. For me, to be honest with you, F above the staff, first and fourth, sharp fourth, is also important to me. Being a jazz player, I can play entire G7 arpeggio in fourth position, then G, B, D, F, and just making the slight adjustments for intonation, you see. So, and I can make it a ninth because the A can also be found in fourth position. So there's a lot can be done. If you watch really great jazz trombone players, they play all these wild licks and hardly moving the slide because all those order positions, and they have gained the control of the playing it in tune and in tone. Those two things. I have one for you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Something we did not talk about. We talked about a whole lot of ways to approach scales and not get bored, but we not talk about actual scale patterns other than the starting on the one, starting on the two. What about going from the first note to the third note, and then from the second note to the fourth note, and then from the third note to the fifth note? We call that playing in thirds.
No, that's great. I mean, so that's still using that same major scale, right?
Yes. And if you want to, you can do it in all the modes as well, but it's actually playing scales in thirds. Another one I would do is three-note patterns. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. See what I'm saying? 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, etc. And then I'll take that three-note pattern and make it a four-note pattern by repeating the first note. So it becomes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
3, 4, 5, 6.
You and Paul McKee are two trombonists that have taught me that exercise. In particular, it's a great method, just again to practice these major scales in a different way of root to root.
Yeah. The more variety you got, the better. And of course, the more complete your control of your technique on your horn is going to be as a result. More flexibility in the typical demands you can handle. Are we at 5 o'clock? I wonder if there are any questions anywhere?
I don't see any, Frank. We probably have maybe like a couple more minutes to wind up with some final thoughts on this topic. I know you guys were going to be planning to schedule some upcoming sessions on maybe some more advanced topics in the future. So I don't know if you have any ideas about that as well.
Well, we were going to try to discuss minor scales today. If we hit the modes and whatnot, we don't have to, but we can. Do we have another 5 minutes, perhaps?
We do.
Kyle, would you like to jump on this one?
Yeah, so minor scales is a great way to get out of just a major mindset when we practice. Oftentimes, you know, we get tired of just hearing that major sounds. So there's some great modes in minor we can take advantage of. Now, you already said the second mode of our major scale is a minor scale.
Dorian.
Dorian, exactly. Dorian minor. Now, there's also a few other modes that we can practice. There's natural and harmonic, right?
But those are the Aeolian.
Very true. Very true.
They're based on the Aeolian because that's the original natural minor. It's the 6th degree. So what we're saying is, if you take any major scale and you play it starting on the 6th degree, you're playing what we call the relative minor scale for that major scale. So again, playing 1 to 1 gives you the major, playing 6 to 6 gives you the relative minor. Okay? Got that out there, kiddos? Okay. Now, if you want to get really, really fancy and make it a harmonic minor, what do? You raise the 7th degree of that scale. And don't get silly.
Right.
You're starting on the 6th. But now the 6th becomes 1 of the scale. So it is the 7 of the 6th.
And you get a really cool sound too, right?
Yeah, because you get that raised 7, and it is actually called harmonic because that raised note is the 3rd of the 5 chord, which is why it's called the harmonic minor. It was put there so you would have a good dominant 7th chord going from the 5 to the 1, even in a minor situation. That's what I call the harmonic minor. So it's a matter of just raising the one note, whether you're going up the scale or down the scale.
And let's talk about melodic minor for a minute. Now, I really enjoy melodic minor. Why? Because it's practically major with the flat 3. Now, you get a really cool sound because of it, and not only is it a great mode in itself, but when we start diving to more advanced modes, such as altered dominant, modes, start using the altered scale, which is a derivative of melodic minor.
The other thing we got to do is that we jazz musicians, we take liberty with things. So in a traditional sense, the melodic minor is a major scale with a flatted 3, only going up the scale.
Yes.
Coming down the scale, everything reverts back to the natural minor position. So it's actually a melodic minor scale is actually 2 different scales. Going up, it is the lower 3rd and what we like to call the raised 6, raised 7.
Yes.
Or you can call it a major scale with a flat 3. But coming down, you restore the 7 and the 6 to their original natural minor positions. So here is Frank being lazy. There are 36 minor scales, and I found a way to practice them 3 at a time because just me, I like to find a way to chop through the crap, you know? So basically, since the harmonic minor is the same animal up and down, I will play up and down the harmonic minor. Sorry, I'll play up. I'm messing myself up.
Okay.
I will play up the natural minor and down the harmonic minor. Up the natural, down the harmonic. That means I'm only changing one note, lowering that 7, okay? Then the second time I went through the scale, I will play it in its melodic form, which means going up, it is raising the 6 and 7 of that minor, and then going down, you're restoring them to their natural minor position, or as we like to say, lowering the 3rd of a major scale going up, and making it a pure natural minor going down. So that way, up and down, I've covered all three forms of that minor scale. And I can move over to the next and the next and the next and the next. And that was my way of dealing with the minor scales. Just get them out there right now. Got the natural, got the harmonic, and got the melodic, which is really two scale because it goes up one way and comes down quite another. And that's something I recommend to everyone. And for those of you who are not very creative and you don't remember things, you can always just write these down. Or, you know, it is also one of the things I put in my book because I knew there were a lot of people who had not yet discovered how shall we say this, economize practicing their minor scales. And at the end, what do? You play the minor arpeggio because the good thing is the arpeggio did not change. All of the various versions of the minor scale do not affect the third or the root or the fifth. Okay?
And at the same time, we can practice or alternate positions too while we're running our scales. So not only are we working on modes, we're working on alternate positions. Change your articulation, and now you're working on three things at the same time. Focus on different tempos, you're knocking four things out. So when we practice, it's not about really focusing on one thing and trying to master that one thing, more so of just trying to be a complete musician, having things as accurate and consistent as possible. Because accuracy and consistency is a lot better than lucky and flashy. Granted, you know, on the golf course, you might hit a shot, you know, one time, but if you're very consistent, you're going to be driving to the hole every hole. So.
Interesting. Consistency.
Yeah.
And also means consistency of practice. Let's put this out there.
Always.
If you only field once a week, doesn't matter. You're never going to be good at it. This is something you do every day. You practice scale. Maybe the majors one day, maybe the minors one day, maybe in root position one day, maybe the second to the second or the third to the third or whatever every day, but you figure it out. Okay?
Sounds great. I'm going to get right on it right now, actually.
All right. You know, as you
go.
see, I'm playing my trombone, so I'm already on it.
Yes, sir.
Well, God, I really appreciate you guys joining us today. So be safe, everybody. Stay well. Keep playing, and we'll see everybody real soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Later.